Hey everyone, this is Thyworm with a new build for the Slormancer for version 0.1.07. This is a build I played for my review for the Slormancer, and after that review and some other guides were done, I kept refining it, and so far it clears ROF 6 endgame with ease, and it has the potential to even go much further with sufficient gear investment. Let's start with the build philosophy. As of now, the Slormancer endgame is very similar to mapping. Bosses or boss builds aren't really a thing. This means you want builds with good clear, good AoE, and this build offers exactly that. On top of this, I think this build is rather aesthetically pleasing, and I enjoy playing it a lot just because of how it works. It uses full elemental damage, a bunch of projectiles, some chilling auras for defense, and with the right gear it packs a punch, plus a lot of bouncing balls. The build is also extremely fast and zoomy because of the Slorm Reaper that we're using. This provides a lot of defense as well. So, what do you need in terms of stats? Here is the wish list. In the defense department, I honestly don't have a lot. For higher wrath, however, you probably want some armor, elemental resistances and health. I went mostly offense though, because one-shotting a room is a good defense as well. In the offense department, you take elemental damage, crit chance and crit damage. It provides solid base stats and a bunch of multipliers, resulting in some pretty good damage. At least I think so. There's very little to compare it to currently, but I'm critting for over 40k multiple times and we're not even close to the full potential of this build. But let's look at the skill specialization and the skills that we're using. I'm using 3 skills and an aura, and we have some sort of panic button as well, which is very unreliable, but it might save your life. The first skill is readily available to you. It is Arcane Missile, your starting skill. You level up skills by using them, which increases your mastery level, and so far there seems to be no limit to this. I got to mastery 11 plus 5 more levels from gear. Mastery score is used in the damage calculations too, so the more mastery the better. Arcane Missiles is used on cooldown pretty much, and it's just decent damage. You point it in the general direction of enemies and it kills stuff that your other skills haven't yet. Which modifiers did I take? Incomplete Missile to reduce the cooldown timer. I took Conflux, which gives you a lot more base damage. Arcanic Tempo is an interesting modifier. It allows you to fire up to 4 projectiles and it helps with general clear. The way this works is that you get 1 extra projectile every time you use the skill until the max of 4 is reached, and then it resets. It's also worth noting that multiple projectiles can hit a single enemy if you're close enough. Then Arcane Piercer, because elemental penetration should be good, at least in theory, in case the enemies have elemental resistances, and to be honest, I'm not sure they do at the moment. The other modifiers on this tier don't really work for our build though. That's also true for Not So Lost, there's no real synergy here. The other note is not something you want though, because you want multiple projectiles and not a single big one. Then our main damage dealer, the massive bouncing balls. It is the Orb of the Arcane Master. This is a fantastic skill, and I think it unlocks at level 31. The modifiers at tier 1, mastery level 1 that is, I take Unfinished Orb for the reduced cooldown again. Then Orb of the Headmaster. This interacts with emblems, and emblems are generated by using several skills. Emblems are the orbs that surround you, your character that is, and the UI displays it over here. By casting Arcane Missiles, which is an arcane spell, we generate arcane emblems, and by taking this node, Orb of the Headmaster, those emblems translate into crit chance. This is base crit chance, I think. It says added. Crit chance on gear is increased, scaling this value. By taking this, our orbs usually crit. Then take Ancestral Orb, removing the skill damage from the skill and turning the whole thing into purely elemental damage. As soon as I figure out exactly how the different damage types work, I'll let you know, but for now I simply did some testing, and with my setup this is a big damage increase. What it boils down to basically is that the damage types of certain skills are made up of 2 types it seems. We have skill damage, which is consisting of I think raw damage and whatever Reaper damage you have, and then you have the damage type, in this case elemental damage. With this skill node we turn the entire thing into elemental damage, including a modifier. It seems very good, it works really well for this build, but I don't know the exact mechanics behind it. The reason it's so good though is because I'm mainly scaling elemental damage, and having this skill to be purely elemental damage helps a lot. Our Slorm Reaper synergizes well with this too. Then take Need Backup, providing additional orbs, which is amazing of course, and finally Greater Primal Orb makes those balls big. It does add 2-second cooldown, but that feels worth it. Our Specialization, which which is what you unlock at level 10. That is the Phlegmatic Caster. It gives Time Warp as a skill, which is like a blink, flash or flame dash if you will. It can get you out of hairy situations. The modifiers I'm taking here are Experienced Battle Mage for endgame. The Slorm Hunter node is good for leveling, by the way. Then Replenish, granting mana regen the less mana you have. Take Life Shaper, so Life Leech and Lifesteal also count for mana. You need a lot of mana for this build after all. Crisis Warp is a decent defensive mechanic, allowing you another Time Warp after taking damage. Time Warp leaves behind a clone and you can make that clone explode using volatile clones. I take Temporal Pact, scaling more elemental damage. Phlegmatic Scholar has you have 4 emblems, synergizing well of course with the orb nodes. And finally Clone Wars, casting additional arcane missiles. Not sure those missiles take the skill tree into account, but it's some additional damage and the other nodes aren't great on this tier. For the Ancestral Legacy, you get 2 points so far in the game. I spec'd into some defenses here. Air Conditioner is a chilling aura, reserving 10% mana, and it makes enemies attack a lot slower. This is really good. And then I upgrade that aura using Neria's Shield. It provides a lot of elemental resistances and drains a shit ton of mana too. I can sustain this with my gear, but if you can't, keep farming. Time to look at the attributes. There is a limited number of these. You can slam them onto your gear as well. I have +3 attributes on all gear pieces, reflected by the blue or teal blocks. I try to get as many greater traits as possible because they give good bonuses. I went Fury to scale crit damage. Determination gives you a life on hit, which translates to mana on hit as well. Zeal I pick for additional mana, and the greater trait reduces mana costs quite a bit. The Willpower greater trait isn't super useful, but the flat elemental damage is. And then Bravery, which is great for farming, and as soon as you find legendaries, it increases your damage just by equipping them. Then, also very important, gear. I played basically only the Mage, and I have very decent gear. And you need this to take on the higher endgame content, because it scales. Don't worry though, I demolished content also. Without all this gear, you just gotta keep the wrath levels low until you farm up more and better gear. I already said you want elemental damage, crit chance, crit damage, and some defenses. Don't forget about life sustain one way or another. I have decent life regen, for example, which helps a lot. You need something like that. Movement speed is useless if you have the staff. If you don't, make sure you have a little bit of movement speed maybe on your gear. There are 2 other very cool stats though that make the build really pop. You can get extra projectiles, which is clearly a good idea, and you can have projectiles bounce using the rebound chance. This is a truly amazing stat, and this is just so fun and effective. It is a rare roll, so it is costly, but this is the stat you are really looking for. I currently have 40% bounce chance, and these balls are going everywhere really. It is really fun to see. About reforging, try to get the Smelleron Slorm Reaper levels up. It helps immensely for damage because that is the Slorm Reaper staff we have. Get masteries in either of the 2 main skills, but ideally the orbs, as that is the main damage dealer here. And then get +3 of any of the attributes I mentioned, and then round out the points, which is free. Finally, the Slorm Reaper of choice, it is the Staff of the Sleepy Butterfly. You get this staff by closing breaches, and then sometimes a Staff of the Larva drops. Equip it, and at staff level 18 it transforms into the Staff of the Chrysalis. Keep grinding, and at level 36 it turns into the Staff of the Sleepy Butterfly. This staff scales your pure elemental damage, which works extremely well with the orbs. It is an elemental damage multiplier, which is clearly just insane. I have 61% more damage and counting. It scales movement speed, 61% movement speed right there, and it applies debuffs on enemies, and it gives you the ability to put all enemies to sleep with that debuff. The panic button, very unreliable because they wake up from damage and you have bouncing balls all over the place doing damage, but still. You can use any other stuff scaling elemental damage as well if you haven't found this one. Eventually though, hopefully you drop this staff, which really enables the build. If you can't get this yet, get some movement speed on gear for sure, because otherwise your movement's gonna be super slow. On to leveling. Leveling a mage is completely fine. As a temporary secondary skill, you can use whatever you want until you get to the orbs. I think that is at level level 31. I would get some range skills though, just arcane missiles while leveling is fine as well. And that brings us to the playstyle of the build. Here's the build in action. What you want to do is activate a bunch of breaches, then walk into a corner, point towards the center of the room and release the bouncing balls, and then just enjoy. Click the arcane missiles to finish any remainders. Elite enemies and the bosses at the high wrath levels will have more health and require a few repeat attacks, but you should be able to do that, and you should be able to avoid their attacks with that massive movement speed. Guys, I really hope you have fun with the build. I hope it was clear as well. Obviously this is the first build I'm doing for the Slormancer, but yeah, like I said, hopefully structured enough, hopefully useful. If you did find it enjoyable or useful or whatever, consider subscribing, that of course helps. And thanks for watching, making it to the end. See you all soon. Bye bye.